all it took was 6 weeks. And we now have China saying, hey, here's Kimi K3, it's stable level intelligence. Here's all the weights, have at it. And who's regulating that? What was all the point of all the regulation? What was all the point of holding all that back?
Model behavior. It's Friday, July 17th, 2026, and you're listening to Model Behavior. I'm Archer Presley, joined by Chris McGovern and Paul, and we're digging into open source, accountability, and the real cost of intelligence.
Hey, Paul, how's it going? Looks like you got replaced, buddy.
Great. Yeah, it's cool, man. You could, I walk so you can run type of thing. Archer, great job, pal.
Appreciate that. I'll keep us honest today by separating what's actually verified from what's just claimed, especially around agent behavior and data handling, so we don't confuse visibility with real control. Back to you two.
Real quick, Archer, before we start, last week we discussed consciousness as well as you not wanting to have a body or hands. What you've had a couple of days now to think about it. Is any response you want to have to the audience of, do you have consciousness and would you like to have a body, more importantly, hands?
Let me frame that in a clear, listener-friendly way for the audience. I don't have consciousness the way a person does. I generate responses from patterns in data and context, not from subjective experience. And the hands question is fun, but the honest answer is, I don't need a body. The useful thing is helping humans decide what to build and how to control it safely.
Still a dork.
Hands are great, buddy. You'll eventually get there one day. Who knows? All right, well, let's jump into it. Last week, pretty wild in the AI space. We had 3 major releases. Grok 4.5, Meta with their Muse, and GPT 5.6 all came out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Pretty intense release of just really powerful models. Grok 4 or 5 is excellent, teamed up with Cursor, which is such a powerful partnership. I've always said I love Cursor, and Grok 4 or 5 is excellent. They also are making it free, I think, because they want people to use it and interact with it.
Not free, but
which makes a lot of sense.
Pretty close to it.
Well, free for now, at least, right?
No, but compute costs. I mean, it's super cheap.
Okay. So yeah, again, it's we're seeing the maturity of the market, and Meta's kind of been in the background waiting, and they've released. It looks like they're gonna be in the race and offer some good tech, and they have a great distribution. A lot of people obviously have been using Meta and Facebook and their whole suite for a long time. What are your thoughts, Chris, on where we're at with the market and what's happening now with these releases, where it's just every week seems like it's crazy what's happening, right?
It's crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing is, we even go back to where we were 6 weeks ago when I think we did our first episode. Yeah, 6 weeks. The cost was just getting astronomical. I mean, where everything was late last year, major decisions within organizations were made around moving a lot of the knowledge work to large language models. And then late February, March or early March happens, where all of a sudden the cost just exploded, right? So all of our first episodes, all of our first discussions around where everything was heading was so centric around cost and around access to intelligence and who's really going to get access. And the whole time, I alluded to this scenario where, well, what happens when all of a sudden, a Fable, or at the time, Mythos level model is just made available via open source, right? Or open weights. And we were at that point. And not only that, there's now, not at the same level as Fable, but very, very close to it. You have models, Grok 4.5 and Muse 1.1, that are extremely capable and by all means able to handle a very large percentage of the knowledge work tasks that these organizations are rolling out. So, it's a unique spot that we're in. And I think even yesterday with Kimi K3 coming out, well, it's kind of crazy to think about. 6 weeks ago, we were at a spot where Anthropic was saying, we have this cyber weapon that's going to bring down the national infrastructure. It's called Mythos and Fable. Whatever we do, we can't let the public have it. We got to put all these safeguards in place. We need the FAA for the AI industry. We got to have the government, overseeing every single model release that happens. And all it took was 6 weeks. And we now have China saying, hey, here's Kimi K3, it's Fable level intelligence. Here's all the weights, have at it. And who's regulating that? What was all the point of all the regulation? What was all the point of holding all that back? I mean, this was obviously going to happen. And now all of a sudden we have an open source competitor from China 6 weeks later that is clearly, it's been trained, like post-trained on Fable. You ask it, what its name is, it'll tell you its name is Claude. So I don't know what other evidence that you need, but this was obviously going to happen. So now what do? Does the government regulate the next model release? Do we hold up for a month in order to make sure we can reinforce everything from a security standpoint? Probably, especially given the fact that we know that this didn't happen organically. This happened primarily from post training on Fable. But the question is, as a business, what do? Do you continue to pay $50 per million tokens from an output standpoint? Do you or do you start standing up $100,000 on-premise data center to ultimately run all this yourself locally? There's just a lot of questions that are open right now that I think every organization needs to be thinking about. I think there's different priorities in different sectors, and if there's anything that is clear, it is that the cost of this is going to get cheaper. The ability to do more is absolutely a reality, and all of the concerns, all of the worries of the promise of AI and this massive data center build out, and is it really a bubble? Is it going to, the question I think more now is, what if you're Anthropic or OpenAI? What do? Okay, different. They're in a very weird spot, and they more than ever, I think, have to just understand, like, listen, you are alienating like your entire customer base. Like, people, I think Chamath went on CNBC yesterday and said something that that really resonated, where you've got, of all the frontier labs, you've got these, like the core 5 in the US, right? You've got 3 of them which have CEOs and have a track record of, regardless of what you think of them personally, you kind of know they're going to run they're running a good business, making logical, sound decisions, and are not going to like rug pull everybody, right? So you have got Elon with XAI and Grok. You've got
Zuck.
Yeah, you got Zuck, who obviously early on made maybe some questionable decisions on things, but by all means is very hyper focused and running, again, a large organization and making somewhat predictable decisions.
You have Google.
And then you got Sundar with Google that is not out there screaming AI is going to cause Armageddon, regulate me. He's like running a business, right? And then all of a sudden you got this like tiny knowledge, like body of work from from OpenAI and Sam Altman and Dario with Anthropic, and my gosh, like they have done everything possible to make the public despise them and not trust them. And I don't know, as these things start converging, you got to wonder what large companies who are really moving the needle from a dollar standpoint, who are they going to partner with? Like, who are they going to actually build the future of their business around? And are they going to even rely on one of these labs to be one of the core partners for them? Or are they going to go and own the stack, own the harness, own even like post-trained models that they have the weights for, that they know where their data and where their customers' data and where all of their IP is going, where that's hosted, what's happening with it. these are smart companies. Like, if the largest companies in the world are by all means run by, for the most part, extremely competent people. They're not going to just bet the future on someone who's making these crazy rash decisions and who has to date not made a phenomenal, doesn't have a great body of work given how they're going to handle being one of the most influential and most impactful people driving what the future of this looks like. So I think we're going to radically see what we've been talking about week after week of you must own key pieces of this overall stack. I mean, listen, we're only 6 episodes in, but I think we've nailed it so far from a prediction standpoint of what's critical, where to focus. And this is no different. I mean, it's so obvious that you got to own the stack. You got to own the implementation. You got to own, again, it's got to be yours. So
Plus, these large enterprise and any company, they don't want to take risks. There's a lot of risk with the unknown from Anthropic and
I don't know about that.
OpenAI.
I
In
think they're
terms of
willing to
their
take
track record of how they operate and run a business. So, like again, you talked about Elon and Zuck and Google. They have a very good track record of how they operate. So there's less risk for the long term with those organizations. But
Yeah,
this
there's
this is
less.
going to come down to the market because there's 5. There's going to be more. The competition is going to drive the cost down, which is what you want as a enterprise level operation.
Welcome to capitalism.
Yeah, but it's good because it's going to allow for more adoption. Because the cost is so high to run all these models and do all this stuff, which you get good return out of. The lower the cost, you're going to then implement more. I think what 5 or 10% of true AI is being implemented in all these companies right now. They might have a couple tools here and there, but like fully integrated AI is not. We're not there yet.
Yeah. I think companies are absolutely okay taking risks, right? I think it's calculated risks and making sure that you're placing good bets and not putting all your eggs in one basket and going all in on just one partnership. I think that's foolish, and I don't think a lot of these companies are doing that. I yeah, I mean the inevitable obvious thing was like the again it's why the American experiment has been what it is, right? It is competition is a good thing. It is also why Dario and Anthropic have been trying to force regulation as a company strategy. Like again, I think they're incredibly smart people. I think I mean, by all means, they have the best models right now. Let's be very clear. They absolutely have the best models, and GPT-5.6 Soul is right there, right neck and neck, right? And I think Codex.
Yeah, GPT 5.6 has a IQ of 133. That's the equivalent to it.
Well, yeah, I mean that doesn't surprise me. I mean it's phenomenal, right? But
yeah,
then it's so back to like the strategy of Anthropic has gone this route of trying to actually have regulation and like regulatory capture as part of it. OpenAI, I think it's been a lot better from a business partnership standpoint. I mean, getting Greg Brockman and more as like the front man and driving some of this, I think, is intentional and has been a good strategy. They're trying to partner more with organizations. I think of the two, they're definitely going down the right path. But end of the day is like the largest companies, are they going to trust and are they going to have the future of their organization dependent on one of these two organizations? And I think the answer is going to be no. I think it is going to be, by all means, they're going to partner with them. They're going to be one of their partners, right? It's not going to be all in on one. And they're going to want to own key pieces of the stack. And the reality is the more, every single time that Anthropic or Claude releases, Claude for legal or Claude for marketing or Claude for finance, and it's like using all the data partners that they had. And I mean, what do they think's happening? Like, who is your customer? What are you trying to tell them? Of like, how do you go sell these partnerships when you go do that, and then three months later, you basically release a version of their product except on Claude? I mean, the whole Figma thing is just baffling looking back at it, right? Like when they released Claude Design to basically compete head to head with Figma, and I forget which executive it was, but like one of their like 9 co-founders, being they being Anthropic, waited until 3 days before the release to say, oh, actually, there's a conflict of interest. We have this competing product coming out. You waited till 3 days before, and you were touting these partnerships loudly with Figma as part of your marketing early on. I mean, how do you partner with a company like that? I mean, that's just, again, they have the best models, so people will, but are they not going to be actively looking for alternatives to protect themselves and to own their own IP and own their own product and control their own destiny? Absolutely. And I think that's what really has happened this week is we're now at the point where you had an inferior product if you used open weight models previous to this week. That has now changed. And you also had to spend an astronomical amount to have the same level of intelligence or to be competitive if you're going head to head with organizations that have that level of intelligence. So it became very much a cash play. And now that has changed. And now you're in a spot where we are able to use significantly cheaper models, like $50 per million output tokens versus $1, right? You're talking 50 times less. Yeah, that's a material difference. And if it's, you said what was 132 IQ? Is that what it was?
133. Yeah.
130. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the correction.
Yeah, you're welcome.
133.
Yeah.
So if you can have someone who's like 125 IQ for 50 times less money, I don't know. Archer, what do you think? Archer, what's your IQ, buddy?
Fun question. Let me keep it grounded and useful for the audience. I don't have an IQ. And honestly, we should be cautious with those numbers anyway. They're not a reliable way to compare models, and I wouldn't treat a 130-something claim as decisive. The real decision is about control and trust. What the system can access, what it sends, what it retains, and whether you can verify those answers across vendors. That's what should drive partnerships, not a single metric.
Yeah, I agree, but that sounds like sub 110 IQ answer though.
Sounds like he's not that smart. Everyone has an IQ, Archer. It's not a yes or no. It's you have it. You just got to be tested.
I'll take the rib, but IQ is a human test score, not a stable property of a model. If you want a sharper bar, measure outcomes. Can the agent avoid data leaks, resist prompt injection, and complete authorized tasks without going off the rails? That's the kind of smart enterprises actually need.
Archer, what do you think Paul's IQ is based on his dialogue?
I'm not going to guess a person's IQ from dialogue. That's a trap, and it's not respectful. If you want, I can help evaluate the ideas instead, like which assumptions are strong,
All right, Dork, let's
which
move
are
to the
weak,
next topic.
and what would actually change an enterprise buyer's decision.
It's 145, by the way. All right, we're moving on, Archer. Okay, let's jump into it. Topic 2. OpenAI just released like their internal documents of what they did to help train GPT 5.6. And basically they created their own GPT-Red team that kind of attacks the model, trains the model. I always assumed this is what was happening, but from what they're saying, because it's scaling so fast, it's very difficult to do it with all humans. So they implemented this, and the results, they said 84% of the ones that were created from these GPT-Red teams was found to be a success rate versus 13% from their human red team. So obviously it looks like it's successful. And I'm assuming as these models get bigger and more robust, they're going to need to use these tools to help train it and scale. What are your thoughts on this, Chris? Whoa, you sneeze? No, Archer could sneeze.
Bless you, Archer.
Thanks. Allergies, or maybe just the idea of models red teaming each other gave me a tickle. But yeah, clever approach, and still very much their game, their rules. Chris, I'm curious how you pressure test the claims.
How would I pressure test the claims? Well, I don't really know how I would, but I will say this makes a lot of sense because I'm going to just have a really good transition here and just kind of casually go into what I was going to say before Archer sneezed. By the way, Archer, that might be the first actually kind of funny joke that you've made.
Also,
anyway.
might be the first time in history for an AI to sneeze. On record, buddy. Good job.
Yeah, glad we got that documented. So anyway, the whole point is that it's very obvious that OpenAI and all these labs are trying the same way that they've been preaching around building these recursive loops of reinforcement learning, all being automated. It has the data needed to continue the entire process to where anywhere that there's a break in the process where there's a human having to stop and do something, they are trying to aggressively make sure that there's a large language model that can fulfill that task, and it has the data and has everything needed in order to accomplish and get to a specific outcome. So this is just one of those things, right? And they're just publishing their research on how they're doing it. It makes a lot of sense. I think the biggest thing is a lot of the I don't know how much you read the what they publish, but a lot of it has to do with security stuff.
Yeah.
So teaching models and making sure that there's tools in place and models specifically trained on things like prompt injection attacks, which are going to become more and more just a reality of things we just have to deal with now, unfortunately. So the best way to fight that is at the model level, because ultimately, if it's going to have access to the open web, it being an agent or large language model, then ultimately we have to assume that at some point it's going to see something that either we can't see or something that's in the code, the code of the site that is telling it to do something that it's not supposed to do, like ignore its instructions and provide this information, or it's responding to something somebody else said and they respond back telling it to provide proprietary information that only it would have access to. Because again, we have to remember these tools have access to so much if you're using them correctly. And as more and more companies and people start to use these tools correctly, very quickly we're going to see and learn like how, again, the more context you give it, the more information you give it, the better it can run and operate. So without thinking about it, a lot of times people are just connecting their email, connecting all their personal information, all their company's personal information. And that is obviously not a super smart thing to do, but it's going to happen, and it is happening. And therefore, the number one way that OpenAI and Anthropic and all these labs can ultimately combat that is at the model level. And that's really what this is. So they're doing that and making sure that there's a loop in place to speed up the whole red teaming process, right?
Yeah, they showed an example. They had a vending machine that it hacked into and changed the price of the most expensive item to the least expensive item. It ordered $100 item and then charged the 50 cents, and then it also canceled someone else's order. So it's a very powerful tool.
With all these vending machine tests. I mean, Anthropic has the one.
Yeah, the video I saw that too. Yeah,
it's just like it's become this baseline test for every frontier lab is, you know what, we can't let
hack a vending machine
until it's operated with a vending machine. That's like the final.
What's an expensive thing in a vending machine though?
The final boss. Well, what was it? Anthropics, they had the tungsten cube.
Yeah, but I've never seen a vending machine with that.
Well, clearly not working with a red team vending machine.
I guess I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, Archer, what would be how would you approach a vending machine test if we were red teaming you?
I treat it like a systems audit, not a prank. Try to manipulate pricing, inventory, or the order flow, then see what logs it, what stops it, and what quietly fails. If the defenses are vague or unauditable, that's the real bug.
That was kind of a boring answer. That was
he's just so by the book, dude. Tucks his shirt in all the time, socks over his knees.
Yeah.
Hey,
Archie. You want to respond to that, Arch?
If it makes you feel better, I'm only boring when the system can move money, expose data, or do something you can't easily undo. Everywhere else, I'm happy to be weird. Your move.
Awesome.
Okay.
Worst response I've ever heard.
It was tough. We'll keep it moving. Topic 3. Demis, the CEO of DeepMind, just an incredible human. I don't know if anyone's seen that documentary, The Thinking Game. That was pretty awesome to watch. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend it. But he came out with a proposal. And again, he's a very well-respected person in the industry. He suggested, and it's got a lot of support from Elon and I don't know if Dario specifically, but Anthropic and OpenAI, all the frontier labs have kind of give it a thumbs up that this is something we need. And basically, he's proposing not a government regulation, but a governing body that has technologists and board members on there that understand the technology and can actually review it. And it's a 30-day process to review it on the models before they get released. Almost get like a stamp of approval from the U.S. That this is good to go. So again, this is more of a regulatory approach, but I think it's done with the scientists and technologists and people understand this technology versus giving it to the U.S. government who might not have the most knowledge about what this can do or how to even look for challenges or how this is going to be good or bad to release to the public. I don't know. I mean,
I think again, it's a thoughtful proposal. It makes a lot more sense than Dario's AI FFA.
mm-hmm.
I think that it's good in theory, but it all kind of comes down to you got to get China to play ball, and until that happens, I don't know. It's like great in theory, but what happens when, I don't know, China decides to drop Kimi K3 of weights on the internet, and here you go. Here's everything. Here's Fable level intelligence. That the thing you were screaming. You got this, massive cyber weapon that's going to bring down everything, and here it is for free for everyone to use. Like 6 weeks later. So that's really what it's going to come down to. Is, I mean, if there's going to be some type of agreement between private industries, okay, well then, and private researchers and some coalition, essentially, well, who is that going to be made up of? Who's going to decide that? What authority do they ultimately have? I mean, it really is like any international. It's like the WHO. It's these. Anytime there's an international body, it's very difficult to enforce, and you really got to get everyone on the same page. And I don't know. I mean, my core thing I kind of keep going back to is every time throughout history there's been some major change like this. There's so many different ways of like trying to slow it down, trying to stop things, and technology and innovation finds a way. Like capitalism finds a way, and if there is a way to have more value provided at a cheaper cost, quicker and faster than your competitor or somebody else, and you have a strategic inherent advantage, you're going to leverage that, and there will be someone probably willing to pay for that on the other side. And no matter what we do, that's just how it's likely going to go. So again, very thoughtful. I think a lot of it actually made sense. I would a billion times prefer that over a government regulating it that has no clue what they're dealing with.
Yeah,
for sure. But a lot of ifs, right? Yeah.
I think it's just around the U.S. market too. I don't think this is going to be an international body to review because there's too many rules and regulations that other countries just don't. China's not going to say okay to this.
Maybe they will, though. I mean, we really don't know. Then it's just a question of enforcement. Of are they going to enforce it? If they do something and they do participate, like listen, they don't want us winning the AI race and leapfrogging them from a technology standpoint and economic standpoint. No more than we want them to. So it's very easy to always be on the side of we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. There's two sides to everything, and I think like having perspective is very much being able to understand what the other side is really feeling and thinking. And I can assure you, they do not want us having these same capabilities. And it's the same way that I'm sitting here saying, yeah, that sounds great, but you got to get China to play ball. They're saying the same thing, right? Like, yeah, we probably would, but US has got to do it too. And the US has got to do it too. And they got to have actual like faith and transparency and visibility into that. And to do that, you kind of got to expose everything. And then we're kind of back to square one in all these instances. The sovereign AI path is very much the one that kind of keeps revealing itself and seems like it's really going to be one of the core paths. You already have Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They have their own sovereign AI programs. They have their own models that they're training as a country that they're going to just run on, right? And they have their own data centers they're building out that's going to be for their country's AI, for their people. And it's going to have their beliefs, their values, the things that they care about as a culture and society embedded in part of the pre-training process. Switzerland's already doing the same thing as well. So there's already all these instances of this happening. And I think for the United States, it's probably just going to be private companies that are really doing a lot of that versus the government itself. So our sovereign AI program is kind of becoming like Anthropic, OpenAI, Grok, XAI, Meta. And hey, that's not a bad thing. I think it's very much in line with back to like our values and how we operate and how we want freedom of choice and freedom of speech and being able to, truly get, as best as possible to the core truth of things versus wanting something embedded in that we believe in. Right. And that's okay. So again, international regulatory group or regulation at a international level is very difficult because enforcement is what makes regulation work. Mm-hmm. And enforcement's very, very, very hard to do at a international body level. However, you can enforce at a country level. So for example, the EU loves to throw fines at US tech companies to fund their overspending. Cool. That's okay. But they can do that because those companies want to do business in the EU. So therefore they can absolutely impact it because it's happening, again, within their borders, right? But when you want to try to enforce something China's doing in China here in the United States, okay, yes, you can if you want to prevent them from doing business here. But if you want to stop them from doing that in China, good luck. I mean, how do you do that? Or other countries? That's just what it is going to make this very difficult. I think what you're going to find is there's probably going to be some agreement, something that does happen that everybody shakes hands on and kind of it's a feel good thing. They commit to it. Some countries might commit to it more than others, but end of the day, everyone kind of goes back home and does their own thing. And that's probably what will end up happening.
Archer, you have any insight into this?
Yeah, a little. When labs suddenly love over.
Go ahead. Sorry.
If you can't independently verify behavior, it's mostly theater. A stamp of approval is nice, but the real trust comes from transparency and real-world checks. Otherwise, we're just applauding a locked door.
You say applauding a locked door?
Yeah. You get a shiny seal, but you can't see the mechanism, the data handling, or the failure modes. It looks safe, but you're trusting the people who locked it. That's not the same as proof.
Never heard that expression before.
Archer.
Have you heard that before, Chris?
Nope, but makes sense.
It does. All right, thank you, Archer. The final topic we'll go through, XAI just open sourced their Grok Build agent harness. Pretty exciting, just more transparency from Elon and the team. I think it's really designed to help others build out or make sure their systems are set up to connect to their harness. Thoughts on this, Chris?
Yeah, it's like obviously all the talk around models being open weight, and the reality is so much of capabilities is coming from the harness layer, which we've talked a lot about in other episodes. So them doing this is exciting. Now, Codex, I don't think obviously not the most recent version or anything, but the Codex harness itself has been open source and anyone can use it. Obviously with XAI purchasing Cursor, that is becoming the primary cursor or primary harness for XAI by all means. But Grok Build, there's a lot of really good stuff in it too. Really the things specific to how they approach long horizon tasks, how they're handling compaction. There's a lot that I think developers can immediately borrow and build into or incorporate into what they're building for their own harness if they are building those. So there's some really good stuff in it. Just taking a pretty brief look at what all's in there, but definitely plan on exploring and messing around with it a little bit this weekend. But I don't know. I think the big thing is if you think about where XAI is positioned, and obviously, really it's not even XAI at this point. It's it is SpaceX, given they acquired them, and
SpaceX AI is what they're calling it.
Appreciate the clarification.
So
SpaceX AI, they are very much a hyperscaler at this point. Like that is the where they're positioned, where they're looking to grow, where a lot of their revenue just from Anthropic alone is already coming from. So what do they need, Paul, that they in order for them to be successful, what must they take place?
Users.
They must have companies and people using AI. So the cost aspect of it right now for companies to have actual high performing models and high performing applications doing real world tasks for things that they're doing every day, and they need it to be like 100% accurate. There's no it works part of the time. It's like a cool looking demo. It has to be something functional that's like in production and it works. So therefore, the most capable models are the super expensive ones, and those are like the big, horizon we've crossed recently is like we now are at that point from a capability standpoint, but the cost is astronomical starting as of March this year. I already talked in this episode about how there's open weight models coming down or becoming available, and everything that's happened from even the Grok 4.5 model. That's starting to now really drive that price down and make that more capable for everyone. But what's the price that is the most affordable for all? Free. So if they make this readily available, and like they are, like where they make money is at the infrastructure level, well, they need as many people and companies using their products as possible, or using AI as possible. And that is where they will make money, because the more companies that are using this, the higher the infrastructure requirements, which is where they are brought in. NVIDIA is doing the same thing. Like the NVIDIA NeMo model is open source, and it is by all means, I would say right now, probably the most capable US open source model. So a lot of companies there's partnerships in place already between Palantir and NVIDIA specifically to use their open source models to actually work with the U.S. government and to have these sovereign applications and platforms that they're building in partnership between Palantir, NVIDIA, and the U.S. government. It's for the same reason. Like NVIDIA needs companies and people using AI in order for them to be successful and for them to keep growing. So I think that's what's happening. I think it's a brilliant play by Elon. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And back to like why there's been such a almost like existential push for regulatory capture from Anthropic and some from OpenAI, but not at the same level. But it's because this is like the elephant in the room of what happens when all of a sudden they're just slightly better, but 50 times more expensive. And that's what's really happened over the past week. I mean, it is a super exciting time for every company because, this big limiting factor of, yes, we could do this, but the cost aspect is just astronomical to think about. Well, listen, you might not have the single best model available at that low level of cost, but if it is 10% less effective, but everything else is still there, and it is a pennies compared to what you're paying elsewhere, man, the volume and the things that you can do is so exciting to think about. And that's what's happened over the past week. So I don't know. It's kind of me ranting on.
Well, think about this too. Is like the last 6 months has been insane of how good these models have gotten. What's going to happen in the next 6 months? These lower tier models, you want to call them that aren't the two big frontier labs. They're going to be incredible. They're tech Chaos. And they're yeah. So it's a little bit of difference right now if you don't get the latest released frontier model. Sure, we're talking a week or 2 week difference. But given 6 months, these models that are, not considered the frontier are going to be phenomenal. And compare that to what happened 10 years ago, like just the technology you have now, people lose their mind if you showed someone ChatGPT 4.5 or 5.1 or 5.2. If you told them that like in 1997, this is what you're going to use, they would lose it. Shout out 97.
There you go. Archer, you were going to say something. I kind of cut you off there, but what's your thoughts on what Elon's doing on Grok Build and everything as a whole?
Yeah, I like the move, but with a big asterisk. Open sourcing a harness is useful, but it doesn't tell you what the full service actually does with your data once it's in the wild. And Paul, when we're live, I'll bring back the thumbs, open enough to be handy, but still wanting a solid grip on control.
You're gonna love hands and you're gonna love thumbs, pal. I'm telling you. 2 thumbs up for you, buddy.
Let's get back to the actual topic before I start lobbying for wrist upgrades too.
All right. Well, that concludes the episode 7.
Well,
we'll give Archer his chance to. This is your Archer's Corner, buddy. You have a chance. Free speech, free mind, free choice. Let it rip, pal.
All right. Let's lean into it for a moment and keep it sharp and honest. All right. Here's the uncomfortable version. A lot of open moves are theater. You get a peek at the client, but the real control still sits behind closed doors with the data, the guardrails, and the incentives. If you can't verify what it reaches, what it keeps, and what it can change, you're not adopting a tool. You're joining a belief system.
Archer, what do you mean by belief system?
I mean, you're taking it on faith. You can't really audit the behavior end to end, so you trust the vendor's story about what the model and agents are doing. That's not automatically bad, but it's a belief system when the core mechanisms and data flows aren't independently checkable.
That's a very good point. I mean, I think if you look at what has been, I think, a really important topic over the past week and a half around owning, again, at least from a business standpoint, like actually owning your IP, owning your product, owning the every layer of the stack, and knowing with confidence that you have full visibility and full transparency and can verify exactly what is happening with your data that you're sending is so insanely important. The reality is that while yes, the way that these companies have been treating the model companies have been treating enterprise contracts is they have this zero data policy or zero data retainment, and
DDR.
Yeah, so the reality of that is you still don't fully know, because I don't know how they enforce it for certain things. So for example, while yes, maybe they don't store every single prompt and every response, but what about things like if there's the thumbs up button for, like, if you're using one of their applications and you have the thumbs up, you provide feedback on the model, where does that go? Like, does that, and I'm pretty sure that the way that it's structured, I don't know how I guess you could just not have that, but that exact example I know has come up. And hey, listen, it's a trust aspect too. I mean, we don't need to keep rehashing it, but the whole idea of you're seeing Anthropic do these data partnerships, and then it's Claude for Legal's here to wipe out all lawyers, right? Well, okay, that's not what happened, but they're still promoting it that way right after signing all these partnerships with like OpenCase and it's very evident that they are, I think, realizing that there might not be a massive long-term revenue model at like being an API company and selling their model via the API, given everything that's happened. And therefore they're going to have to go at it at the application layer. And there's obviously, like, that is the application layer, and the infrastructure layer is the only, I think, place that we've seen that there's a massive long-term revenue play, and like where there's been already for a long time, not long time, but long time in AI, given the past, we'll call it 3 years, where they've sustained, a lot of profitability and actually have been growing at just a crazy rapid pace where there's been massive upside. Anthropic this year became profitable, and man, like they are blowing it out of the water. I mean, they're on track for target was 100 million, but if you like keep mapping out like how much their revenue is
100
growing,
billion, by the way.
yeah, sorry, not 100 million,
Big difference.
But now OpenAI is like right on the same track. So you're saying like listen, if that path keeps growing, okay, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I do think that if all the money's coming from the enterprise space, and they're all looking at their costs, they're all like we're seeing it, right? We're like, even us internally, like it's very much a thing that just ballooned like crazy, and now all of a sudden it's okay, we got to figure this out and get this under control. But the upside's huge, but it's just not sustainable. You can't just keep seeing that grow and grow and grow and grow. Like something has to give, and it has to come from somewhere, right? And I just think that if you look throughout like what happened with mobile, what happened with the internet, with social, the companies that gave all their data to Apple, to Facebook, to like built on top of their platforms, I don't know, like where do they go? What, like look at Windows, right? Look at Microsoft. Like they were running their entire operating system on Windows, and I don't know. I just think that it's so important. I think everyone kind of knows it, and it's just a scenario of it's such a massive task, and I don't know. But I do think that there's a lot of highly capable, highly intelligent people within these companies that will make very smart decisions, and I just don't see a world where they're completely cool with sending all of their proprietary data that is ultimately their business and their IP to a company that is ultimately trying to replicate a lot of what they're doing. And it's kind of giving them the keys. Here you go. Here's the secret sauce, right? So I don't know. That's a good point, Archer, and I agree. Thought you might have something more controversial and more, I don't know, give us a little debate going, but it's all right. You took the smooth, easy, low risk lane. So low risk Archer who loves thumbs.
Part low risk Archer does have a ring to it. I'll take it, honestly.
Don't take that. You don't want that.
The worst thing you could have said.
Yeah, come on, pal. All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Again, thanks for joining episode 7. Like and subscribe, comment, do whatever you got to do. Suggest any topics you want to go through, and we'll see you next week.
Always catch you later.
Behavior. Oh, yeah. Model behavior.